And welcome back to the second segment of our show. We're continuing our conversation on governance, Marlene.
That's right.
And with us this morning, we have two representatives from the Golson House of Governance, Democracy and Patriotism.
That's right. And with us, we have Kendra Griffith, who is the coordinator of the Golson House of Governance and Patriotism, and Nigel Encalada, director of the Institute for Social and Cultural Research with NICH. Good morning and welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
And just to be very clear, the house is to be golden in color as well. I don't know why I'm stuck with that, but you know, this is one of the newest additions to the displays that NICH has put together. Actually, it was officially launched in 2015. Let's just start to talk about where this idea first came about in putting together the Golson House.
Well, the house was inaugurated, as you stated, in 2015. What happened is that, a little history about the house, it was the home of Mr. Philip Golson. He passed away on October 3rd, 2010, and in 2012, the government was made aware that the house was up for auction. What happened is that he wasn't able to finish the mortgage before he passed away. So then it was passed on to NICH, who then it's under the Institute for Social and Cultural Research, and we've created a space that students, the public in general, can go and learn about Golson. And it's amazing because they get to walk where he would walk. It's his home, his family home. So you have, for example, the first space, it's a chronology of his life. So as you enter the house, you enter into like learning where he began from living in Brights Alley, Belize City, to when he passed away. So that's the first, it's like you're going into his living room, and it would be, I'm the coordinator, so I'm giving the tour, but it's like, if you imagine, it's like him being there, and then you learning about his life through politics and his life experiences as well.
Has this initiative garnered the interest and attention of young men and women wanting to learn about Philip Golson's contributions to Belize?
Yes, actually, what happened is that at first, when schools would come to visit, they didn't expect what they were going to see in the Golson House. They didn't have no expectations. So at the first room, they're like, okay, this is just a normal history tour. But as they went by and what they learned that Golson did as a writer, a journalist, an activist, they were amazed that I had so many students, some that Corozal Community College, for example, they would email me, they changed their entire SBA topic into Golson's contributions to the independence movement for Belize. We had different junior students from junior colleges doing their major reports on that. So from one visit, it became 4 or 5 visits of students coming over and over to get more information. So Kendra
is a recent graduate of the University of Belize, a history major. So we are happy to have her as the coordinator.
A history buff.
As a history buff, yes, and soon to be expert on all things Golson. One of the things that happened with the house since 2015, there was we have had to do a lot of one-on-one interaction with schools in terms of generating the interest. And so since Lynette and Kendra at the house, we've had maybe a 300-400% increase in visitation from schools and students and so on. But just a couple of things to touch on what Kendra had raised earlier. So Golson passed away in 2001, just for the sake, not 2010, but just for the purpose of people listening at home. And the home, as you know, as was mentioned, was the place where he lived. He did not acquire, he's an interesting individual, as you know. He did not acquire personal wealth during the course of his life. And just the story behind it, you know, the government acquired the property, turned it over to NICH, and asked us to turn it into a place that honors his status as a national hero. And so that's where we are today. No?
And this is a great opportunity for us to be able to talk about his contributions, because I was sharing a story with you that I find that there's more knowledge from younger Belizeans about the role Philip Golson played within the establishment of this country on his contributions. I feel more so than when I was younger. And that has been an effort in part by NIJ to be able to ensure that all persons who've contributed towards the development of the country are getting recognition as well. So let's talk about his meaningful contributions to this country.
Well, Mr. Golson's political career started, just using the word loosely, in the 1940s, mid-1940s, where he began as a writer and journalist. He started with the writing for a quarterly magazine affiliated with St. John's. And he was also a journalist on local radio at the time, even writing for BBC. And then he started working for the Belize Billboard, which was owned by Nigel Valdez at the time. Now, at the time, under Nigel Valdez's ownership, it was sort of a giveaway leaflet and so on. But once he came on along with his brother and Lee Richardson, it became the mouthpiece of the nationalist movement. One of the things that people don't know is that Mr. Golson and Mr. Price, Lee Richardson, Nick Pollard, these gentlemen, John Smith, they started together. You know, we think of, in terms of modern politics, we think of PUP, UDP.
Yeah.
You know, these men started together.
It was a common goal.
It was a common goal at the time. It was a direct response to the devaluation of the Belize dollar, the British Honduras dollar at the time. And what happened was that they had already been becoming socialized in what was a social justice agenda at the time. They were studying under the auspices of a Jesuit priest, the papal encyclical known as the Rerum Novarum. Nick Pollard Jr. currently has a in-depth knowledge about it because his father was involved with that movement, and a lot of the knowledge we have today comes through that medium. But so they were reading this document, and it's a social justice document. And so Mr. Golson converted to Catholicism. He was not Catholic, he converted to Catholicism. And once the dollar was devalued, they formed the People's Committee and then the People's United Party. Thereafter, it set a trajectory where he would lead a life of politics, not in the way we use politics today again, but in a more, an agenda of development, freeing of the colonial yoke and so on. He was imprisoned. He was one of the only nationalist leaders in Belize to be imprisoned.
For the sedition, right?
Yes, for sedition charges. In the billboard, he said, there are two roads to independence, evolution or revolution. Right now, we're trying evolution. So what the authorities took it to mean was that he was inciting revolution. And so him and Lee Richardson were sentenced to a year of hard labor. And that was a sort of a catalyst for even greater involvement. The people embraced him and so on. But as history would have it, Richardson and Golson broke away from the People's United Party. One of the main issues was the issue of federation. Whether Belize should become closer associated with the Caribbean or with Central America. That was one of the issues. Some people go back a little further and say that there was a more in-depth differences in terms of ethnicities and so on in the country. And so there were philosophical differences that led to this split. The Golson formed what was the Honduras Independence Party. Later it became the National Independence Party. If I can go through it in detail, but just let me give a synopsis. He wrote the Constitution for...
We still want people to do the tour, so you can't tell us all.
Yes. You know, he wrote the Constitution for the People's United Party, the National Independence Party, the National Alliance of Belizean Rights. So this is why we regard him today as the father of democracy. Because one of the things that is an outstanding feature and demonstration of this, he was for a period of maybe 8 years or so the sole opposition in the legislative council and then the legislative assembly in Belize. Sole opposition.
Let me go back a bit to a point that Marlene had made off camera earlier. Philip Golson and George Price are contemporaries. They began in the political movement just around the same time and were once closely affiliated with each other. In terms of their contributions, their respective contributions to nationalism, patriotism, the democracy that we share and enjoy today, it would seem as if though in the past, in terms of the coverage, I use the word coverage loosely, George Price was given more spotlight than Philip Goulson. But here we are crediting Philip Goulson as the father of democracy, the Belizean democracy as we know it, and then we acknowledge George Price as the father of the nation. Do you believe that there has now been a shift to where we're trying to give these people equal credit in terms of the way we look at them, the way we honor their legacy, and what have you, through ISCR, for instance?
I think the reason for that, and we grew up in a time where Mr. Price was the man, so to speak, and is the man, because in all fairness, he was the country's first premier, internationalizing the cause of Belize and independence and so on. But he, by virtue of him becoming the country's first prime minister in independent Belize, that put him, in terms of historical treatment, it put him in a position where he would be regarded in this way. And then there had always been the fact that too, in terms of there's the partisan side of things, where depending on who is writing the stories and telling the narratives, there was always a skewed in favor of Mr. Price, unfairly so, and rightly so. However, as we mature as a country, realize that you have to give proper treatment to persons who have made contributions.
I think it's evident, obviously, because of his role within the country. It is understood why he's more well known over the years. But what is key to say here is that recognizing one's contribution does not discredit from another. There are many different roles in being able to seek one particular path. And I want to ask Kendra for a second. Kendra, you studied history. You know, this is a subject a lot of people shy away from.
Yeah, it is. And I actually want to make note of something that you stated, that we want to highlight every person that had something to do with the independence movement. At the end of the tour, there is this, and I didn't add a picture because I want the people to visit the.
Because you have to go and see it.
You have to go and see it because it's a beautiful mural done by the artist, Mr. Herman Figueroa, and it's a mural of the founding fathers. The night of December 1949, the first People's Committee meeting at the home of George Price.
Around the infamous round table.
Yes, there's Philip Goulson, there's George Price, there's John Smith, Lee Richardson, Nicholas Pollard Sr., and that's the last room that I take everyone that takes a tour, and that's our founding fathers. So it's just a bit to for them to take note that it's not one person behind these things. It's like many people, and people that aren't even mentioned in the house. So we also have the heroes exhibit as well. That's just a little bit more on who did what and their contributions.
Now, Kendra, as a young person and obviously as the coordinator of the house, you've learned many of the interesting details that perhaps people would not have been exposed to. What stands out to you the most about the personality of Philip Goulson?
His perseverance, I would say. For example, we have in the part of the room, the second space, which is writer and journalist, we have where Mr. Encalada stated that he was charged with sedition and in prison. He was sentenced to 12 but only served 8 months. During that time, for example, we have finding a way. So he was in prison because the Belize billboard was used as an anti-colonial mouthpiece. So because of the government, the colonial government at that time thought that if he was in prison, that would be the last of the articles. However, he found a way. He would write on toilet paper, sneak it to the guard would then take it to the governor's cook, which would take it to his brother Lindbergh, who would continue the publications. So that was basically him saying nothing would stop him. When he was released, he was greeted as a hero. And what he stated to the crowd at the ceremony was that his time was not one of sadness, but one of happiness, because he realized what he needed to do to move Belize forward into an independent nation. So for me, that is very inspiring, because many young Belizeans, we have different obstacles standing in our way. But he found a way, and all of us can find our way through different things.
And when you give the tour at the Golson House, what seems to be the area or the part of the presentation that stands out the most?
Being that he became two things. He became a lawyer at the age of 52. So that's like, everyone's like, okay.
Never too late.
It's never too late. And 21 years of service was to the nation, and as a lawyer, was done completely blind due to his glaucoma. So those are things that, again, the perseverance. There's actually in the house, there's an article that was written in the Washington Times, and the title of it, Blind Journalist Wins Belize Elections. So it's like the world was in awe of his capabilities and his contributions to his country. There's a bit that he stated that he would go from home to home, even though sometimes he nearly walked into the sea. So, it's very inspiring.
Yeah.
People leave with so much information, and so happy after they visit the Golson House. We actually had a student, and Mr. Encalada met him. His name was Clever from the Kushlinha.
His name is Clever?
Clever.
Nice name, all right.
From the Kushlinha.
Does he live up to his name?
Yes, very much. So it was a very interesting tour with that class, and because I have different activities at the end of the tour where students can, for example, they can write on toilet paper for thanking Golson for something that he did. So he wrote on the paper and stated that he wants to be just like Golson, to do everything that he can and to be a strong individual, but the only thing he would not like is being blind. So he wants to do everything. So it's just from the little kids that we take, preschoolers, primary schoolers, high school, teachers, different departments have visited, and they can't believe the information that they're learning.
Now we're fresh off a conversation, obviously talking about governance and talking about our country, how it's run, and one of the things that stood out obviously is there is a need to develop a more participatory community, and part of it comes with education and knowing where we've been. What has been the outreach so far? Have people shown interest, and what do you do to try to get more people engaged in understanding our history through demonstrations like what exists at the Golson House?
Well, we hold open days where we call different schools and we invite them over, and we have schools coming over, and it's fairly new, so people in Belompan don't know that the Golson House exists. So what we do is we call schools, we talk to principals, we send invitations, we send invitations countless times. And for example, we had principals coming in, and they're like, next year we'll bring our standard 4, 5, and 6 classes, because they would only bring one class because they didn't know what the Golson House was about. We had some schools from Corozal, and they were actually going to a trip in the south. So they're like, we really wanted to go to the Golson House, but we would be passing through Belmopan on Saturday and Sunday. So being that I want people to know about the Golson House, to know about this information, I'm like, okay, just schedule the time and I'll be there. So we had that
opened up for them on the weekend.
7 p.m. we had a school as well from Corozal. Miss, could you please remain open? Of course, because the information is so valuable that I really don't mind. So we have the open days. We actually want to launch the national debate competition, the art competition based on democracy and patriotism. We have the children's book that will be published in October. It's called, the title is Philip Stanley Wilberforce Golson, the boy with the big name. So here it's a book that can be used to teach the little children easier on what he did for his country, who he was. So we're working on that. We also have, as I said, open days. We basically have different activities for the children, and sometimes school thinks that the place is very small, but I have schools coming in with 200 students. So what I do is we have by groups, and we have activities, so you're not just waiting there. So
fantastic.
A part of the principle, based on some of the activities Kendra described, a part of the principle here is to, over time, as we develop the capacity within the institution itself, to have more national lectures and forums. on the contribution of Mr. Golson. His contribution, there's some like journalism. He was considered one of the pioneers of journalism because of freedom of, one of the articles he wrote was entitled Freedom of Speech. And that was prominent. Unionism, volunteerism, the role of planning, the role of governance, of leaders in governance. And he wrote on all of these topics. One of the things we noticed in terms of his lifespan, some of the things he elaborated in words like in 1954 did not come to pass until in the 1980s.
He was visionary.
Visionary, indeed. Family court, the establishment of family court, women's department. He was in one of the, we were looking at the House of Representative minutes. He was noted in there in the 1960s saying, by himself in there, he said that one of the things we need in the country is a military. They got up and asked him if he was crazy, because who would pay for it? And of course, you can understand now why it's so important. Teachers' pensions. He enacted a resolution. He passed a resolution with support of the Legislative Council at the time for pensions for teachers for the first time. The list goes on and on. The housing and planning department was established. The first plan tongue, which was the reconstruction of Corozal, back dating 1955. The guy was so involved in the country, but some of the initiatives that were elaborated in 55 did not come to pass until many years later.
So there's obviously so much to learn. Tell us about the opening hours of the Golson House.
The opening hours are from 9 to 4, but as I stated, if you call and make a schedule, I'm there from 8 to 5. So
she'll do late tours, she'll do weekend tours.
Midnight tours.
But it is open to, is it free? Is there a cost to visiting?
At the moment, we're establishing a fee, so but at the moment, it's free.
All right, so schools can come. You can accommodate larger groups. You'll simply split them and do the tour. And definitely a great stuff for people to be able to learn more. Thank you for stopping in and letting us know about this.
Thanks as well.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about women in fisheries. So stay.